With a muted ceremony and an empty stadium, the much-delayed Tokyo Olympic Games have finally begun. The shadow of cancellation looms as the cases continue to rise. There's a lot at stake for Japan, apart from safety, prestige and public sentiment, all the money that they've pumped in. How much money are we talking about? $15.4 billion. 15.4, that's how much money Japan has put in, which makes this year's Olympics the most expensive in history ever. How much will Japan earn in return? Well, with no ticket sales this year, Japan will only earn a few billions through sponsorships and broadcasting rights. And this is the sad truth about Olympic Games in general, where host nations burn a hole in their pockets and earn peanuts. Of course, it's all in the spirit of the game, but time and again, the spirit has left countries with huge bills they cannot afford to pay, with some nations even slipping into recession after hosting an Olympic Games. Here's a report.
The Olympic Games have finally begun. 11,500 athletes have reached Tokyo, preparing themselves for what will be 16 days of adrenaline-induced competitive games. This year's tournament will be the most diverse and gender-balanced. But do you know that it's also going to be the most expensive? Japan is spending a fortune to host these games. Initially, the cost was estimated to be $12.6 billion. But the delay of the event has incurred an additional cost of $2.8 billion, taking the total expenditure to $15.4 billion. And this is besides an additional $200 million that are expected to get added to the bill once the games conclude. Who will foot this enormous bill? Japan, of course, but the bill will be split 3 ways between all the organizers. This includes Japan's central government, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, and local organizers in Tokyo City. How much will they get in return? This is an uncomfortable question. Japan was expected to earn $800 million from ticket sales, but with no spectators being allowed, this sum is out of consideration. What remains are $2 billion in sponsorships and hospitality, and $3 billion in broadcasting rights. Both these sums will get split with the International Olympic Committee. This begs the question, what impact will the Games have on Japan's economy? Auditors estimate that the economic cost could shoot up to around $26 billion if post-Games maintenance is taken into account. Part of the blame for this huge loss goes to the pandemic. But the fact is that host nations have always been at loss, failing to recover the amount they invested. Here are some examples. The 2004 Summer Olympics in Greece were expected to cost $3 billion, but they ended up costing Greece $11 billion, pushing the country's economy into a crippling debt crisis. The 2014 Winter Olympics in Russia were estimated to cost $12 billion. Instead, the final cost was around $50 billion. How did Moscow afford the bill? Russian oligarchs bailed it out with their generous contributions. And lastly, the 2016 Rio Olympics were estimated to cost $3 billion. Instead, the final cost was close to $13 billion. The city of Rio had to cut healthcare and police spending to afford the losses. These were just a few examples. Almost every Olympic Games in history has left its country with huge bills. Not to mention dozens of expensive venues simply left to the elements after a handful of uses. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.